Hey everyone, it's Tay. It's Dr. Tay. Good to see all of you. I know that the background is different from last week. Last week I was in my car doing late night latte, but I am back home getting comfortable, trying my best. You see a little glow because it's hot. But I'm going to get on Facebook and share, waiting for folks to tune in. But please share. This is a conversation that I really believe needs to be had, and I want everyone to weigh in and share their thoughts. So make sure that you click share, and I shall do the same on my handy dandy. And let's talk and give everyone a few minutes to, not a few minutes, a few moments to join us so we can get the conversation started. My Wi-Fi is being disrespectful. And it's too hot for a latte, so tall glass of water. So giving everyone a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds. Please hold. All right, y'all, I'm back. Still no. Okay, here we go. Now we want to be respectful. All right, so I'm going to share. See, just getting up made me start sweating. But tonight we are going to be talking about mental health. Of course, everyone knows I'm a psychologist. That's what I do. It's what I'm passionate about. But July is Minority Mental Health Month, and we're going to talk about where that came from and also why minorities need their own month to bring awareness to mental health. So, like I said, please share, like I just did, so that we can get this conversation started. I really want everyone to join in. And hey, Pastor Moore, thank you so much for tuning in. It was a pleasure being on the panel. What was it, last week? Being on the panel with you and Crown Ministries last week, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. So let's get started. And those who join in, they can definitely get in on the conversation. So, as you've seen, the topic for tonight is mental health, melanated mental health. Why? Because I'm going to be talking about folks who have melanin, black and brown people. This month is for us. It's to help bring awareness to mental health for black and brown communities. So why is there such a thing as Minority Mental Health Month? May was Mental Health Month, which was very general. Why do we need a specific month just for us? So there's some history behind it. B.B. Moore Campbell was an author and an activist when it comes to mental health. And she and the co-founder of NAMI Urban, I think it was DC, they saw a need for the stigma to be broken in black and brown communities with regard to mental health. So Minority Mental Health Month has been in the works for a very long time. So now it's come to be known as BB Moore Campbell National Minority Mental Health Month. Very long name, but going forward, we're just going to call it Minority Mental Health Month. So here we are in 2018 celebrating July as Minority Mental Health Month. So that's the history, that's the background. But why? Why couldn't we just celebrate, but bring awareness to mental health during May, which was Mental Health Month? Like, why do we need our own special thing? And that's what I really want to get into. That's the bulk of what I'd really like to share. So those of you who have tuned in from my broadcasts, heard me preach, heard me teach, heard me lead workshops, I like to give acronyms. It helps you to remember it, and it's much easier to access the information when you need it. So the summary that, hey, Pastor Cherie, Pastor Reverend, sorry, all of that. You never knew there was a Minority Mental Health Month. Girl, you want me to be completely honest with you? I didn't know either. But I'm glad there is, and I think this is the first year that attention is really being put into it. So why one for us? Why a specific month set aside for us? So the acronym I'm going to present tonight is REDS. Not because I'm a Delta, but that's how it worked out. But REDS. So and when I say we, I don't just mean Black people, African American people. I mean anyone who has melanin, who's considered an ethnic minority. So Latinx, African American, Caribbean American, people from Middle Eastern countries, all of that. I'm talking about all that when I say we. So we receive differently, we experience different things, we deal differently, and we see differently. That's what I ran to get. I ran to get my notes because I wanted to make sure that I share everything that has been on my mind since I was planning today's broadcast. So first of all, we receive differently. We receive awareness efforts differently. When people are marketing mental health services, we receive that differently. And there are a lot of different reasons. There's research about help-seeking behaviors in ethnic minority communities and the barriers that prevent us from seeking help. One of the reasons is trust. There is a long history, and I'll just speak from the African American perspective. There's a lot of trust issues when it comes to seeking help. Why is there a trust issue when it comes to mental health? Because traditionally, the mental health field and psychological field has been dominated by middle-aged white men. And because of slavery and oppression and all of that, they're trust issues. So how am I going to go to you seeking help when you look like the people who oppressed me? So that's one reason as far as African Americans are concerned, as well as other Black and brown ethnic minorities. We receive differently. As far as awareness efforts are concerned, if awareness efforts are being presented by the people who traditionally dominate the mental health world, middle-aged white men, people who look like me are going to have difficulty receiving from them. How am I going to seek mental health services? How am I going to get a screening or get evaluated for the symptoms that I might be having, and the people don't look like me? And that's a barrier as well. Oftentimes we connect to people who have some similarities to us. So if we are Black and brown people, and these awareness efforts are being presented by people who don't look like us, our assumption is going to be, oh, well, they don't understand my plight. They don't understand what it's like to be part of a low socioeconomic group. They don't understand what it's like to be the only person of color in my class, things like that. So those are reasons why we receive differently. We receive outreach efforts and awareness efforts differently than our white counterparts. So that's the R. The E is we experience different things. Now, I'm not saying that trauma, things like trauma, aren't universal. Mental health is important across the board, but we as Black and brown people, we experience different things. Also, they might be the same situations, but we react to them in a different way because of our history, because of our life experiences, because of our family culture. So we experience different things in different ways. An example our from our why am I drawing a blank? From current events. When a young Black male is killed, and we continue to see news coverage about it, and we hear about it on the radio, and we see videos on social media, we experience it differently. And it's also something that's unique to us because we have been seeing more Black males, more Black females, especially younger people, killed, especially at the hands of law enforcement. And by no means is this an opportunity to bash law enforcement. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that our white counterparts are not experiencing it to that degree, and they're not experiencing it like we do. So there are different things that we experience that other folks who aren't from Black and brown communities don't experience. Another example that's universal but we experience differently is coming from low socioeconomic groups. Yes, that's something that's goes across the board. White people, Black people, Hispanic people. There are always groups of people who come from low socioeconomic status groups. However, because we are ethnic minorities, we experience it differently. Why? Because we might not have access to the mental health care, or our communities might be different. The way our families are structured might cause us to experience different things in that low socioeconomic situation. So we experience different things. Sorry, somebody just sent me a text and she said, "Oh, fireworks." I thought she was commenting that she could hear the fireworks outside on the live. So we experience different things. Also, racism. People can debate me if they want, but there are groups that don't experience racism like Black and brown people do. Let's talk about, since I've given a lot of African American examples, let's talk about brown people, people who wear hijabs or headscarves or wear traditional Muslim attire, and how they have been marginalized in the wake of September 11th, or in the years following September 11th, being not called out. That's not the word I'm looking for, but called out's not what I'm saying. But let's say, like with TSA, separating them, and there's been a lot of racism there. That's not something that their white counterparts have experienced. So as Black and brown people, as melanated people, we just experience things differently. And the things that are universal, we experience different things, and the things that are universal, we experience in a different way. So the R was we receive differently. The E was that we experience different things in different ways. The D is we deal differently. Why is it that we deal differently? I'll give an example, and this is not a race or melanin related situation, but think about grief. Everybody grieves differently. One person might cry, one person might throw themselves into their work and become a workaholic. One person might isolate themselves. Like, everybody grieves differently. So just like that, it's the same as mental health overall. we all deal differently, especially when we come from cultures that are expected to be strong, expected to handle everything. And we're talking about minority mental health. Let's talk about men. So African American men, they have the race piece. They also have the male piece. They're going to deal with things a lot differently than their white male counterparts. Just like they're going to singled out or targeted. Thank you. They're going to handle things in a very different way than their white male counterparts. Also, when it comes to issues of mental health, we, as Black and brown people, ethnic minorities, we don't seek help. And in recent years, with awareness being brought to these communities and services being more accessible, that's not the case as much, but it's still an issue. We deal differently because we don't go to a therapist, we go to church. And I'm not knocking that. People know that I'm very active in my church, and I, my faith in God is strong. But traditionally, there's plenty of research that shows that people who are of Latin background, people who are African American, Caribbeans, African, we go to our spirituality. So if we deal differently, the approach and how we address matters of mental health has to be different. If the research says that ethnic minorities typically go to church or seek spirituality when it comes to dealing with mental health symptoms or when they're in psychological distress, then maybe that means we need to tweak our approach. We need to shift our focus when it comes to talking about mental health awareness, because this particular group of people, we just deal differently. And one of the big things is spirituality, and again, that goes back to the trust issues. If we don't trust people, we're going to deal the best way we know how. We're going to go to church. We're going to, talk to people in our families, especially if we come from collectivistic cultures. We're going to talk to the people in our circles before we talk to other people. Another issue with regard to dealing differently. I'm sure somebody on this live has heard the whole what goes on at home stays at home, what goes on in the house stays in the house, and they've been hearing that since they were children. So if that's something that's been ingrained in a person's head, they're not going to seek help. They're not going to seek help from somebody's counselor, because Big Mama told me not to tell what's going on. My daddy told me not to tell what's going on in our household. So I'm not going to go to a therapist. I'm going to deal the best way I can. So that means going to my pastor or speaking to my best friend at school, or on the negative, less constructive side, maybe self-medicating with substances. So we deal differently. So the R, I like to repeat as well. The R is we receive differently. The E, we experience different things in different ways. The D is that we deal differently. And the S, we see differently. What do you mean by that, Dr. Tay? The whole mental health thing, we just see it differently. Some people who are part of ethnic minority groups see it as a crutch. I'm supposed to be strong. Generations before me were strong. I should be able to handle this. I should be able to work through this trauma. I should be able to deal with this grief. So because we are members of groups of people who are expected to be strong and deal with everything, we don't see mental health as or seeking help as a priority. We just don't see it that way because of history, because of the things that have been ingrained in our heads. Also, because of stigma. I've seen so many clients who are Black and brown people, and their first thing is, I don't even belong here. I'm not crazy. Because we see mental health as this thing that, attending to it is a luxury. Like, only white people do it. And again, that's because of what the I'm sorry for the noise, y'all. The window is open because it's hot. So you hear the bus and the M80s and all of the fireworks. I apologize. So because it was, the field didn't look like us, we're seeing it completely different from people who, who see it. It's not who use it regularly or traditionally use it regularly. Also, we see it as a privilege because therapy is expensive. Some therapists aren't covered by insurance. For example, if you go to a Christian counselor, if they're not on an insurance panel, they're not going to be covered by your insurance. So that might not be a priority for you if you have to pay $150 per session. So when it comes to managing mental health, people of ethnic minority groups, we just see it differently. And also the stigma is universal as well, but when it comes to ethnic minority groups, it's just, I think it adds to it. So not only are you an ethnic minority, but now you claim to be in psychological distress, or you claim to have this disorder. So it's like the chips keep stacking up against you. So we talked about the history of Minority Mental Health Month and why we need to have our own month, because there are certain things that just need to be tailor fit to ethnic minority groups so that it sticks, so that it makes sense, so that it resonates more. You're going to be more receptive if you hear things that pertain to you coming from someone who looks like you, because our assumption is that if a person looks like us, then they have some idea of what our plight is and what's going on with us. And that might not always be the case, but it certainly helps to get the foot in the door. So yes, we need an entire month to really shift our focus from overall mental health to how we need to address specific issues that relate to melanated people or ethnic minorities, people of color, etc., etc., etc. Those of you who have questions or comments, please feel free to type. I see the comments popping up, so feel free to chime in. In the meantime, I want to talk about some things that are going on in the community, my immediate community, which is New York City and Long Island, things that are going on in recognition of Mental Health Month, and things that just happen to be going on in July. So things that I'm a part of and may not be a part of as well. A friend of mine, I believe her name is Adrienne Terry. Yes, she has a lot of different lives going on. You can friend her on Facebook. A lot of different live streams, all focused on minority mental health, but different areas of it. So domestic violence, trauma, mental health in the pews, or with a church focus, or mental health and millennials. So there are a lot of different topics that she's going to be covering, and they happen on Thursdays, I believe. So if you friend her, you can follow her live feeds. I will be a guest on one of her lives. Where ironing out the details. I'll definitely be a guest. It's just a matter of what date. I believe it's going to be the 12th. But I will be posting a graphic with all of hi, Miss Cindy, with all of my appearances and such for Mental Health Month, because I think it's important that we get the word out. Also on July 17th, Crown Ministries will be having their second installation. I believe it's not confirmed, but July 17th, it's going to be the second installation of their Sacred Space panel discussion. The first panel discussion was really successful. I participated in that, and we talked about overall mental health and depression. And I think the topic for the next one is going to be trauma and PTSD, because that was a topic that was mentioned a lot in the first session. So that's that date, July 17th. Also, on July 21st, and this is not in the community, but I also know a lot of people from Baltimore. Hey, all of my Baltimore folk, spent 4 years in Baltimore for school. Nettie, why am I blanking on her name right now? Oh my gosh. I just connected to her like today, and she's doing some fabulous work. She's actually having a brunch. She's having a brunch. Her organization is Women of Strength. The keynote speaker is going to be Adara Sharon. And there's going to be a panel discussion as well, just having this really important discussion about mental health as it relates to women specifically. So if you are in the Maryland area, I believe it's Silver Springs, I'm not sure, definitely go to the website and look at the information. Like I said, I'll be posting a graphic with the different events that are coming up. I think those are the 3 events that I wanted to mention. I'm sure that there will be more. I will make it my business to share information about additional events because this is a conversation that needs to be had. One thing I was telling Nettie about the brunch approach, I told her I love it because we don't talk about mental health. Like that's still a very taboo topic, but brunch is like the thing to do. Everybody loves brunch. So if you present brunch and then this typically difficult topic, it's going to make it more palatable for people. I was like, oh my gosh, this concept is amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. So yeah, we really need to have these conversations, and whatever approach we need to take in order to make sure that these conversations happen, then they need to happen. So with all of that said, those are the dates. We talked about why Minority Mental Health Month is so important. Also, like this is the kickoff late night latte, but for the entire month of July, every late night latte is going to have a some kind of mental health theme. So I've spoken to a number of people, and I'm trying to secure the schedule, like finalize the schedule. I definitely have someone for next week. Next week, my guest is going to be a rap rap artist named Hey Ref. Hey bro, how are you? It's my sister's husband to be. An artist named Detonator, and I went to his concert. We went to college together. I went to his concert, and you know how artists kind of do like a little talking in between songs, and he was talking about anxiety. He said, you know, I've had those times where I questioned my gifts, and I questioned, you know, if this was meant for me to do and things like that. And he spoke to that, the anxiety piece, and I was really hey Diana, I was really struck by that. I was impressed by the fact that he even said the word anxiety in that forum and said, you know, I've experienced these things too. So I'm going to have him on next week, and we're going to talk about his movement and his the Daydreamers movement, and how, you know, the anxiety of not knowing if he should be in this field or that field. We're going to talk about all of that. I know it's going to be a really great interview. Also, I'm not going to share any names yet, but so we're going to talk about anxiety with regard to dreams and aspirations. Also going to be talking about depression and suicide. I'm going to have a guest who is willing to share their story about having suicidal thoughts, or you know, even making an attempt. Also want to talk about trauma. Those who have been following me for a while know that trauma is something that's very important to me. Not so much being traumatized, but talking about it, because a lot of people have experienced trauma and experienced traumatic events and don't even know it. They have all of these symptoms that seem to be random, but they don't realize that they experienced a traumatic event and their mind, body, and interpersonal life is being affected. So we're going to talk about trauma, suicide and depression, anxiety, and I also am working on having another mental health professional who looks like me on. I'm actually not waiting to hear back, but my line sister, those of you who don't know, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and my line sister is a child psychiatrist. And I think it's important to kind of break those barriers with regard to help seeking. It's important to see that people are in the field who look like us, people who get it, who understand the barriers. But she has a toddler like I do. Thank God, mine are sleeping. So hopefully she can get on, and her daughter goes to bed before 10 o'clock. So I'm really excited about my tentative lineup for Mental Health Month. This is really, really important stuff. Hey, Kendra. Kendra is my god sister. Thank you so much for your support, boo. This is important stuff. This is a really important topic. So, if you don't have any questions, I don't see any questions so far, just a lot of comments and folks saying, hey, I'm watching. Share this because this is important stuff. This is just the tip of the iceberg with regard to the conversation that needs to be had concerning mental health and the reason why we have a Minority Mental Health Month. So all month long, late night lattes are going to be dedicated to Minority Mental Health Month and people telling their stories, and also people who are in the field. So you know that you're not alone and that there are actually people in the field who get it. So make sure you share this broadcast. Also, make sure that you follow Dr. Tay on all social media outlets, Instagram and Facebook at That's Dr. Tay, THATSDRTE. That's Dr. Tay. And also, if you have any questions, you can always feel free to DM me. You can slide in the DMs. Or you can email me at thatsdrtay@gmail.com if you have any questions, concerns, topics that you want to see covered, as well as help with referrals. I'm not in private practice yet, but for that reason, I'm really passionate about helping people get to the next level in their healing and their recovery. So I am more than willing to help people navigate the referral process. So that's it. I thank you all for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. As always, make sure that you follow social media and so that you get notifications for when I go live. And yeah, that's it. So tune in next week for the next episode of Late Night Latte with Dr. Tay. We're going to be speaking with the artist Detonator, and it's going to be awesome. So I look forward to celebrating Minority Mental Health Month with all of you and seeing all of you tune in. Have a great night.